Okay, welcome everybody. We're going to open the agenda for the Architectural Board of Review for October 18th of 2021. Start with our roll call, please.
All right, thank you. This is Mary. I'll go ahead and take the roll call, and I'll start with Chair Moore,
Here.
Vice Chair Six,
Here.
Board Member Anderson,
Here.
Board Member Black,
Here.
Board Member Noon,
Here.
Board Member Olson,
Here.
and Board Member Whalen.
And here.
All right, we have a quorum. Thank you.
All right, let's go into general business and starting with public comment. Any member of the public may address the board for up to 2 minutes on any subject within our jurisdiction that is not scheduled on this agenda for public discussion. You can follow the instructions on screen to raise your hand. Do we have anybody out there?
Thank you, Chair Moore. At this time, we do have a few members of the public who have joined the webinar. However, I don't see that they've raised their hand to speak on any general public correspondence. Members of the public, just if the item that, actually, I do see somebody has raised their hand. If the item that you would like to speak on is something that's on today's agenda, that would be an appropriate time to speak. I still see your hand is still raised. Okay. Oh, they've lowered their hand. So I don't see that anybody has raised their hand on any general public correspondence. Mary, did receive any general written public correspondence on items that are not on today's agenda?
Thank you, Christina and board members. We did receive one piece of general written correspondence from Lori Rafferty, which was distributed to the board before this meeting. Thank you.
I do see that the general public commenter has raised their hand again, Chair Moore. We'll give them 2 minutes to speak. Mr. Guy D, I will unmute you and you will have 2 minutes to speak to the board. Thank you.
Hi. Not sure if you can hear me. The timer isn't running.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I'm not sure if I should speak about this during the item, but we didn't receive notice, and I've spoken with neighbors who didn't receive notice either. This is for the first item on the agenda today.
Okay, so if it's specific to that item, then we can hear your public comment at that point.
Okay.
Do you have any other general public comment?
I think it applies just to the item.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we have anyone else?
Thank you, Chair Moore. I don't see that anybody else's hand has raised.
Okay, then we can close public comment and go on to approval of the minutes for October 4th. Okay. So motion by Vice Chair Six for approval. I will second that motion. Is there any discussion?
Chair Moore,
Yes.
Rich here, under item number 1, comment number 3. We can insert after the word membrane, say roof membrane in all walking areas of the rooftop area. I think they did have a deck in some areas, but not in others, or it seemed that way on the plans. So insert. Okay. Are we clear on that, Mary?
Yes, thank you.
And then on item number 2, comment number 2, I think it would just be clear of, the Woodburn, so after the last sentence, are not insert the word in view conflict with the neighbor's windows. That's all.
Okay. That's fine with me. Anything else? If not, let's take our
No.
vote, please.
All right, thank you. I'll start with Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson.
Abstain, I was absent.
All right, thank you. And Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. And move on to the consent calendar for October 11th, please. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Great. Second by Olson, or sorry, not Olson, Black.
Yep.
Any discussion? No? Let's take a vote, please.
All right, I'll start with Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson.
Abstain, I was absent.
Okay, thank you. And Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries.
All right, and then today's consent calendar agenda, if we could have that up before we make a motion. So that those present we can scan through it really quickly, just so those present can take a quick look.
Move we accept as presented.
Second. Wait a minute, there's one more here. Excuse me.
Move we accept as presented.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? No? Let's take a vote, please.
All right, Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And now moving on to announcements, requests by applicants, future agenda items and appeals.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I have several announcements. Board Member Whalen will be absent from the full board hearings on November 1st and November 15th. And I just wanted to let the board members know that we're starting in November a new cycle for consent reviewers. That will be Vice Chair Six and Board Member Anderson in November and December. That's it.
Okay, thank you. And if no one has anything else to add, we can go to subcommittee reports. Has anyone met?
Not as yet, thank you.
Okay. Then we can close general business or move on from general business and go to our first item if we are ready. If our applicants are ready. I think we're a little ahead.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I believe the primary applicant for this item is here and ready.
Okay. Well, I can at the very least introduce the item and applicants can go from there. So this is item 1. This is 125 and 145 South Calle Cesar Chavez, 110 and 114 South Quarantina Street. This is a new item for concept review. This is a new concrete surface storage yard for equipment and vehicles on the existing vacant site. Most existing trees are proposed to be removed and new trees are proposed. The project is adjacent to El Estero drainage and proposes wetland delineation and habitat restoration, 2 bioretention basins, as well as additional remediation of contaminated soil. Proposed grading quantity is approximately 2,530 cubic yards of cut and 120 cubic yards of fill. Project requires planning commission approval of a coastal development permit. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. This project requires compliance with the project compatibility findings. All right. Ms. McGuire, do you have something to add before we get started?
Thank you, Chair Moore. At this time, I'd actually like to introduce Mr. Tony Bauman, as he'll be giving a brief staff presentation regarding this project prior to the applicant's presentation.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair Moore and board members. I don't have a presentation per se, but just a few introductory comments from staff. Staff has completed 2 rounds of land development team review, and the application is still incomplete. One of the items that required, one of the incomplete items was to come to the ABR for conceptual review and ABR comments. And we would appreciate it if the ABR could consider a project compatibility finding regarding an appropriate amount of landscaping. This is not, I don't mean to imply that staff doesn't think the proposed landscaping is adequate, but we do look to the ABR for comments on the landscaping, understanding that it is an industrial storage yard. And if the ABR finds the project generally satisfactory, you could continue the project to the Planning Commission. It would return to staff for the rest of the completeness items, but following that, it could move along to the Planning Commission. And other than that, I'm here for questions if you have any for staff. Thank you.
Okay, and then on to the applicant. Please welcome. You could note the timer, the 15-minute timer there for your presentation on the screen. And if you could introduce yourself and take us through your proposal, please.
Thank you. John Kuykendall with DMI, agent for Marburg, the applicant. I will just give a brief overview of the project and then probably turn it over to Christopher with RRM to go over the landscaping, since that seems to be one of the items that Tony would like to get some feedback from ABR on. I believe Chris is as a listener, so he may have to raise his hand to be able to be acknowledged to participate. He sent me an email, so maybe we can deal with that. But to go over the proposed project, the site is currently, it's comprised of 4 parcels. It's vacant industrial zone land. We are proposing to grade the site and put in an 8-inch concrete pavement structure, as this site's going to be used for storage of Marburg equipment and vehicles. We are also proposing perimeter landscaping consistent with the city's pedestrian street guidelines for parkways, street improvements, sidewalks, street trees. We are also including 2 bioretention basins for stormwater runoff. And then the El Estero drainage drains into the southwest corner of the property. And as part of our review, we are needing to address it with a habitat restoration plan. So on the site plan, you'll see that there's the El Estero drainage has been designated or considered as a wetland. So we have a 25-foot setback. And as part of that, there is the DUDEC prepared, the habitat restoration plan that kind of surrounds that area and extends a little bit to the west-east along the railroad tracks as part of some of the retention area as well. The project does have soil contamination. We have been working with Track Environmental to remediate that, and EHS. We've addressed 3 of the 4 parcels. We still have to address the 4th parcel, which is the location of the wetland area. We had to first get the habitat restoration plan completed before we can move forward with EHS on that, but that is concurrently going forward. We also, on this property, before Marburg acquired it, the city had entered into an off-site parking agreement with what is now Path Homeless Shelter that is just up the street on Cacique. And as part of that, our project doesn't require any parking, but we, as part of that off-site agreement, we need to provide 20 surface parking spaces on the southeast parcel. Again, this is 4 parcels, the southeast parcel, which is at the corner of Katrina and Cacique. And so on the site plans, you'll see the 20 parking spaces. We are adding or converting one of them to ADA because as part of the original approval for the expansion of Path, not sure why, but the ADA space was not required to be on their property. So as part of this application, city staff is asking us to provide it on our site and a path of travel to the street, which you can see there on the landscape plan. Thank you. Who's doing that? And as far as other and then we're doing a perimeter fence, which is 6 feet in height. It is similar to what we have approved at the 2 South Quarantina Marburg site, just up the street. It's a precast concrete fence that will be of a dark terracotta color, and it will be on the perimeter of the properties fronting the roadways. On the south side, we proposed to retain the existing chain link fence along the Union Pacific Railroad corridor, as well as chain link fence within the interior. And the site will only be accessed from South Quarantina Street via the existing driveway now that was put in when the city put in the surface parking areas. The one request we do have of ABR is to consider a waiver or a reduction for the planters associated with this, like a typical parking area. The city, when they put in the parking, did not provide any parking planters on the perimeter or interior. And as part of this, the city has asked us to do that. But one of the things that we would ask the ABR to consider is this parking is temporary in nature. So if the Path Homeless Shelter either reduces its operation in size, less parking is going to need, or if they cease operation altogether, this parking goes away. So it is a temporary, in effect, parking for their use as long as they remain in operation. And the other concern is with this parking, we also have 23 feet of drive aisle behind it. So it takes a lot of usable space away from the parcel for Marburg's staging and equipment use. And so what we're proposing is a 1 to 2 foot planter strip along the southern property boundary adjacent to Union Pacific Railroad. It would consist of vines and some other small shrubs that would screen it from there, but it is not adjacent to a residential zone and it's not adjacent to a street. So this area is not visible really from any public viewing area. So we are hopeful that ABR will be receptive to that request. And I'll have, with that is pretty much the overall project. It's pretty straightforward parking, staging area. I'll turn it over to Chris, who can kind of go through the actual landscaping that we show here on the proposed plan. And again, Chris may need to raise his hand to get access to the.
Mr. DeFore, you've been elevated to panelist. You may use your control buttons on your control panel to give yourself access to speaking and webcam.
Hi, yeah, I can see that I've unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So thanks, John, for leading us into this. I just wanted to add a little bit on the trees. So we are re-landscaping and enhancing the area that is the restoration area on the lower left of the page that you see there. Calle Caesar, we're trying to preserve the existing trees along there. It's a little unclear on South Quarantina, but the trees that are along that frontage, due to elevation changes with the sidewalk, we're not able to save those trees, but we are proposing to replace those with the approved city street trees. Those would be the Brisbane boxes as approved. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. As John was saying, we have kind of that accessible walkway into that accessible spot as well. Irrigation wise, we're going to be feeding it from both sides, South Quarantina as well as Calle Cesar Chavez. Available if there are further questions on it.
And then
Okay, is there anything
I think
else?
That concludes it. Just the only thing I was going to add on the street trees, we did look at trying to save the street trees on South Quarantina, but as Chris had mentioned, due to the elevation changes and the location where they are in the right of way on that street, it wasn't going to be feasible. So we have to remove and replace in order to accommodate the parkway and the sidewalk and everything else.
Yeah, and my apologies. It looks like it's a little unclear as to show the new trees, but they would be replaced in kind in the same spaces.
Okay, thank you. If that is it, we can move to public comment. And this is the time for any member of the public who's interested in this particular item to raise your hand, and that will let staff know that you would like to make a comment.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I do see several members of the public have raised their hand. Mr. Guy D, I will be unmuting you. You'll need to unmute yourself, and you will have 2 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, so first, I'd just like to put on the record, and also I've sent an email, City Attorney, ABR Secretary, and among others, that we were not properly notified of this. And there are a lot of people who are strongly in opposition of this. I know this is just a production job to a lot of people who are looking at it on their computer screen, but they don't understand what's actually going on there. So we weren't properly notified. An architect who's a friend of mine had told me about this, that they saw this just today, and I had to shift a lot of things around to be able to do this right now. So we've got a lot to say, and it's hard to say anything in 2 minutes. We need to get our group organized. I'll just start saying that December 2019, we had a good group come into ABR prior to the pandemic. People said all sorts of things. ABR basically told Marburg's team back to the drawing board. May 2020, right after George Floyd, everything was just a total nightmare, and midst of shutdown, ABR was getting used to working from home rather than in front of a big conference table. The plan went through without enough considerations. That was for 2 South Quarantina. So we've got to make a lot of the changes because ABR was on the right track, really hiding all of this. And I think ABR kind of expected a lot of conditions to be set along the way with the SHO, Planning Commission, City Council, but that didn't happen. So really, we would appreciate if ABR takes this very, very seriously. 2 of these parcels are in the appealable zone. This will go to the Coastal Commission this time. We're hoping that a body outside the city of Santa Barbara takes this seriously, but we appreciate ABR for everything that it does.
All right, thank you. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Thank you, Chair Moore. I see that Jonathan Doloff has raised their hand indicating that they'd like to speak. Mr. Doloff, I have unmuted you and you will have 2 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would just like to comment on this. I work very close to this property, so I'm there all the time. I'm impacted by the design of this, and I think that we can give a lot of consideration to the height of the fence and the construction of the fence. I think that we can match existing Marburg designs that are prevalent on the recycling facility that was built in the 80s. And also we can match other areas of Cesar Chavez and match other areas of the coastal zone, like we find on Cabrillo with the Hilton, the Doubletree. I know that the homeless, they use this area to kind of shuttle between downtown and some of the services in the area. So I think a 6-foot fence is inadequate. I think it should be at least 8 feet. And I know that Marburg's facilities, they use a lot of trucks and they back up into their spaces. And then the backup beepers are really high on the trucks. So I think the higher the wall can be, the more we can contain the noise inside this property. I think that it's not an industrial storage zone. I think it's effectively a parking lot. And I also think that this is Santa Barbara and this is a coastal zone. It's very visible for tourists. A lot of people come off cruise ships, come off the beach, they bike through the area, they see this area, and we want to make this area as beautiful as possible. We're lucky that Marburg has an existing design that is very beautiful, that recycling facility that's on the north side of the freeway. If you look at that, it has really nice landscaping, really nice setbacks. The wall is stucco and it has their name on it, and it's crawling with vines and it's beautiful. And all Marburg's plans, I think, should follow that design. I've seen some new plans that don't follow that design and they're really unsightly.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have anybody else that would like to speak?
Thank you, Chair Moore. At this time, I don't see that anybody else has raised their hand indicating that they would like to speak on this item. Mary, have you received any written public correspondence for this item?
Thank you, Christina and board members. A late letter was just received from Mr. Guy Dolev, which will be distributed to the board after this meeting, but no additional written public comment has been received. Thank you.
All right, if that is everybody that wishes to speak, we can close public comment and go on to questions from the board. Who would like to go first? Mr. Black, go ahead.
Thank you. Let's see, landscape related questions. I know there's trees to be removed. Could you tell me how many? And then how many new trees are you putting in?
This is John Kuykendall. I'm saying there's a cluster of trees in the middle, and it's approximately 17 trees, I believe, that are be removed, and we're proposing 21 new trees. This includes the perimeter as well as the trees that are shown on the landscape plan within the restoration area and the bioretention basins.
Okay.
I think, sorry, Mr. Black, but I think it would be really helpful for the board and the public if we could run through the photos and
Yes.
perhaps an aerial photo as well, showing the surrounding area, etc.
You're here.
Thank
I would
you.
agree.
So the applicant is welcome to chime in here and
Oh, sure.
tell us what we're looking at.
So this is the frontage on Calle Cesar Chavez, where you have the existing parkway and sidewalk, curb gutter. And then there's also a landscape median as you get closer down to the frontage of the southern portion of the project site near the bridge where the El Estero drainage goes across. And there's a chain link fence here. We're proposing as part of this to retain this area, and then we'll have a 1 to 2 foot additional landscaped area, and then our 6 foot fence that would run the length of the property down to the railroad tracks, to their property. And you can show the others. This is across the street, directly across from Calle Cesar Chavez. So similar landscape on those developments where I believe it's the name of the boat supply place is. You can go to the next one. And this is near the southeast corner of the project site. So the left figure, the photo that you see is the entry into what has historically been the surface parking area that the city provided since 2001, I believe is when they first paved this area with asphalt, and looks like a little bit of concrete because we're gonna have to remove it. And this is where the 20 surface parking spaces have existed since then. And then the right photo is the existing streetscape looking north up South Quarantina. And you can see how it doesn't show the difference in grade as well as it does further up, but this is where there is some concern with the right of way of the street and how we would do the sidewalk, the 4-foot plant parkway with the location of the trees. So that's why we ended up having to propose to remove and replace. Go to the next one. So this is the frontage on the other side of the street as part of the railroad square, where they have sidewalk, eucalyptus trees as part of their street trees and some other shrubs, and then a smaller planter. I don't believe that's a 4-foot planter going on the east side of South Quarantina Street. That's the same on both of those. So you can go to the next photo. The left one is just looking east from the southeast corner of the project. That's looking down Cacique toward the homeless shelter, which is down there approximately 800 feet, which is the surface parking area is servicing that area. The photo on the right is a photo looking due west at the restoration area, at the what is now kind of a wetland. It's Aristotle drainage. It's fenced off right now, has some sand for soil drainage, but it's been somewhat marked off because, as one of the members mentioned, it has been historically accessed by homeless people. And so this has been a challenge to keep them out. And so it's been fenced to try to do the best to try to keep them out of that area. And you can see it's undeveloped. Go to the next photo. It should have a more central photo of the site. This one is, this one's looking east, but it's going south toward the railroad tracks from Calle Cesar Chavez. So that's what this is showing. Yeah, there you are. And so on the right is the El Estero drainage. It's fenced off where you have where we're going to be doing a 25-foot buffer and restoration area. And that white wall across, that's on the other side of the railroad tracks. So there's a chain link fence, probably 60 feet in front of that for the width of the railroad corridor. And then the trees on the left, those eucalyptus, that's the trees that are in the center of this project site that would be removed and replaced with perimeter trees and what we're proposing to be part of the habitat restoration plan. Next photo, I think there may be one more, or maybe that's it. Oh, that's it.
Okay, thank you. And is there an aerial photo that's a part of this?
We could probably have to bring one up. Tony has that, the city's one.
It's always helpful to have an aerial. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like we do.
Chris or Mike, do you have one?
If you give me a second, I can pull it up.
Yep, that's what I was saying.
Unfortunately, we can't share screens. So,
Tony, do you have one that you had before?
okay, well, it doesn't look like we can do that. So Board Member Black was in the middle of his questions before I interrupted. Continue, please.
Let's see, I think my other question so am I to understand then that on Cesar Chavez, those existing street trees would be retained, but on Quarantina, they'd be removed and replaced?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's correct.
How many are there? Okay, you don't surely show them on your landscape plan?
There's 6 of them.
6.
Yeah. 6, okay, I see.
So to clarify John's earlier statement, there's 17 trees that we're removing. We're replacing 21 that's on the southern perimeter, and then that does not include the 6 that would be replaced as part of the Quarantina. So in addition to the 21 plus 6, you're 27.
And then my last question has to do with how wide is that planter along that south boundary along the railroad right of way, where you have the parking spaces? Did you say 1 to 2 feet? Is that what I heard?
That's my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but that's so that it could accommodate particular vines and some other small plantings.
Correct. It's at 2 feet right now.
Okay. Those are the only questions I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Who's next? Mr. Six, go ahead.
Yes, in regards to, Kaya Caesar, the configuration of the concrete goes right to the back of the fence. Is there anticipated possibility for a future vehicular access to that? Or is there a reason why it goes right up to the fence like that on your side?
So let me say the proposed 6-foot precast concrete fence will be along the property frontage as shown, and then it'll go chain link inward toward that. So we're not proposing any connectivity between the other parcels.
I'm talking about possible future connectivity between Cesar Chavez and the internal site.
Not with this particular, not with this particular project. I'm not aware of any.
All right. So there'd be no gate there then?
No gate. Long Cedar,
no gate. Is the proposal to have this fence against the back of that sidewalk then?
So we have the sidewalk and then we'll have a landscape strip and then the fence.
How wide is the landscape strip?
I believe it varies from 1 to 2 feet.
All right, thank you. And then on Quarantina, there will be a gate there. What material will that gate be?
Chris, do you know, or Mike, what do you have proposed? I forget if it was.
I believe that it was open for discussion, but I think we were leaning towards chain link at the time.
Okay, thank you. Were there any discussions for a creative way to modify the parkway, sidewalk, and configurations, dimensions, and layout of South Quarantina Street in order to save the trees?
So we did take a look at that, and I don't know if you can upgrade Mike Hamilton, our civil engineer, because the grade elevations played into that. But we were trying to save the existing Brisbane boxes initially.
Are you available? Or go ahead.
Mr. Hamilton, you've been upgraded to panelist if you'd like to speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the trees, I'm not sure if you can bring back that photo again, but it's not just the horizontal positioning of the trees, but the grade difference in getting ADA to work was challenging on the Quarantina side. Yeah, you can see as you move further back, that grade is a good 12 to, I think, towards the rear, or as you move to the north, 18 inches above the top of the curve grade. And so that's why it made it challenging.
So I guess my question suggests that if your wall and workable area inside your yard was moved back, you could have more depth and more depth, safe trees, have a unique sidewalk dimension from the street, and you'd have more room to navigate that 18 inches. Was any of that explored?
Yeah. Excuse me, yeah, but within the constraints that we had, it just, I wasn't able to get ADA access coming into or out of, our connections on the south and the north.
And one of those constraints was keeping the wall
You'd have-
right at, the contained wall right at the property line, correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
One of your constraints was the owner's constraint to keep the wall right at the property line?
Yeah, and the wall's actually offset a little bit from the right-of-way line, but even with that, we didn't explore much further than that area that they've already.
Okay, thanks. What's contained in the yard, and what is the highest equipment or vehicle height that this is going to be contained in this?
The types of material or the equipment would be, or the vehicles would be the trash trucks you see driving around the community today. To see the PNG or other types of vehicles.
They're about 12 feet high.
I think so. And I wish I should, I don't know if he could probably speak to that if he's on. And then the various types of equipment would be similar to what's going to be, at 2 South Quarantina. It's some of their, restroom facilities, other things that they service the community with. And so some of the, yeah, okay.
So we don't have any photographs of from if these side property lines, the south property line, north property line are transparent. We don't have any photographs of views oblique to Civas or Quarantina to show what you're gonna see down the street, correct?
And I'm sorry, so where you're viewing, you're saying looking from South Quarantina toward the railroad tracks?
Yeah.
Well, you're gonna have, you're not, yeah, if you're a pedestrian, you're not gonna be able to, you're gonna be a 6 foot tall, solid.
No, I'm talking if you're northward of your property on either South Quarantina or northward on Cesar Chavez, looking south toward the chain link fence, what are you going to see?
I don't think you would be able to see the sight line doesn't show that. You're not going to see the fencing or any of that.
And then is there going to be any lighting proposed for this site?
Yes, there will be. I don't know if you can show it'll show the type of lighting, but it's just going to be perimeter within the, on the perimeter of the storage area. I think it was on the landscape plan, I believe.
So you have specs on that? Maybe I apologize if I apologize.
I think it's on sheet 2 or 3.
All right.
It appears over there in the symbol legend as well.
Right there. Yeah, and there is a symbol on the plan that shows where they're located.
Okay. And I would assume that these are radical cutoff fixtures?
What is it, radical?
Radical cutoff fixtures, so no light spills on
Yes,
the other
yes.
property.
And we're using the same lighting that was approved on 2 South Quarantina, exactly the same.
Okay, thank you. And then last, I didn't quite understand the photos. Some of the existing trees inside the property which are going to be removed, are those, can we get a photograph or can we see the photograph of those again to identify whether they're skyline trees or not?
We did have a DUDEC prepare an assessment of the trees as a request from city staff. And the conclusion was that these trees they're not specimen trees. They don't provide a habitat for butterflies. So there was no.
So is this the group right to the left, to the right?
To the left,
hand?
yeah. Yes, those trees that are in the middle, it's relatively small cluster of eucalyptus trees that vary in width and their diameter. But the biologists determined that they're not considered ESHA and we're in support of them being removed.
All those will have to be removed to generate the new retention area, correct?
No, this is in the middle of the entire project area. So it's right in the middle. So they're being removed. So we have complete access for maneuverability, storage of the equipment and vehicles. The area on the right of that photo, that's the restoration area. That's the one that's going to have the more extensive habitat replantings, removal and replantings. But they're subject to specific plant requirements that have to be consistent with the habitat restoration plan, consistent with what's allowed in a wetland. We do have to speak to that if you need specific information.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, on the left-hand side of this photo is the eucalyptus that will be removed.
Yes, that is the cluster of eucalyptus trees in the middle of the project site that will be removed.
And then to the right are the trees that will be manipulated in order to establish the retention area, correct?
Correct. Non-natives were removed, replaced with natives. Any invasive species were removed and replaced with appropriate vegetation.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Olson, you had some questions?
Yes. The trees that you're replacing, are you recommending a replacement size?
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Chris, you go.
Yeah, along South Quarantina, they're going to be the 24-inch box size. I believe on the interior, I gotta pull up the legend here. If you could scroll down a little bit, I believe it's called out there, but no. But I think along the interior, it's going to be more 15-gallon. But along the street, it's 24-inch box.
Thank you. Those 1 to 2 foot planting areas, and I'm guessing you're saying it's 1 to 2 because along the Calle Cesar Chavez there are 1 feet in certain areas there and 2 feet in others, but along the railroad tracks, are those 1 or 2 foot planting areas?
2 foot is the minimum up by the parking area.
And by minimum, I see you mean that that long, what we can see, that long thin strip, that would be the 2 foot area of
Correct.
A planting area.
Correct.
Back to so I may be naive, but on this question, but given the size of this project, it would seem like that planning area, if it facilitated your idea of what you're going to put there, another foot would be easy to give, given the size of the project. And also, along Calle Cesar Chavez, isn't it possible to make that planting area that is the 1 and 2 feet larger, double in size, to facilitate planting area? Is there a reason why you cut that back to 1 foot and 2 feet?
No, so what we're proposing is part of the fence, the precast fence, we're proposing to be able to screen it with vines and other small shrubs. So we believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, the 1 to 2 foot is necessary to support the plantings. There is already a landscape parkway along Calle Cesar Chavez that we're not proposing to remove, or it's going to remain in place. So we're adding another 1 to 2 feet on the other side, on our property side, to help screen the fencing that's going to be there. And similarly with the 1 to 2 feet on the South Quarantina side. So we have the 4-foot planter, the 6-foot sidewalk, and the 1 to 2 feet of additional plantings to screen the wall. The 2 feet along the southern boundary, the reason we're trying to minimize that is not only do we have the 20 parking spaces that are not required as part of our project, but we have to have another 23 feet behind that. So these parking spaces are roughly 18 feet deep, maybe a little more. So you got another 20, you probably have about a third of that parcel not usable, the maneuverability for these parking spaces. So to add another, 2-3 feet, that's why we were looking to see if we can get a waiver, because every square foot is important to be able to utilize it if we can.
Thank you.
The 2 foot provides adequate screening for an area that is not visible from the public. As it's on the southern, it's facing really the railroad track. And it's just along this area where the rest of it does get expanded along the southern boundary, which is where you have more of a visible viewing spot from Calle Cesar Chavez into the site. But that's screened from what we're proposing.
Thank you. One last question. Can we look at the picture of that parkway at Calle Cesar Chavez one more time? So that the sidewalk will that sidewalk stay and not be replaced?
Correct. So those trees, that parkway, the sidewalk will remain. We will have, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike Hamilton with RM, but since there's a grade differential here again, as you can kind of see, it's I think it could be almost 2 feet. So we'll have kind of a sloped landscape area, and then the wall will be sitting on top of that. So you're going to get an effective height probably of higher than 6 feet for the perimeter fence here along this part of the project.
And that area between the sidewalk and your new fence is about 1 foot?
It's going to be roughly 1 to 2 foot. It's going to vary because the wall will be kind of notched in and out periodically, just to give it some context.
And do you have a section of that area, a typical section of that fence, of your wall and that area?
Chris, you want to refer to your plan?
Yeah, I think this is probably the best section. It notches in and out to provide vine pockets in those areas. And as John mentioned, there's variation on the depth of the planter to provide some shadow and depth on the wall itself.
So we're looking at a typical where there isn't, we're not dealing with that change in elevation.
Correct. This one is not showing a change in elevation.
That's all my questions.
Okay, thank you. Who's next? Anybody else? Oh, okay, I've got a couple of questions since we're on the trees. So looking at the photos of the existing street trees along Quarantina and Cesar Chavez, are those, in your landscape professional opinion, are those essentially full grown and full spread at their current height and current age? If we could go back to the photos.
Yeah, if we could go back to the photos. I think you probably are wanting to talk more about the ones on Quarantina, correct?
Both. Let's start with these, Cesar Chavez, please. As far as their canopy, or is this the maximum volume they're going to have?
No, I would anticipate these trees they're probably, I would say in their 30s. They have a little bit more size and growth that they could provide.
Okay, and then on the other side of the parcel on the, those guys, yeah. These ones, they're
These
kind
are-
of varying canopy.
Yeah, these are the Brisbane boxes. They, it's hard to tell. I mean, they're varying. I'm not an arborist by trade. I would say that they're pretty close to being in full growth, but yeah, that there may be some potential that that could still come out of that.
Okay, and so you would be replanting trees that are obviously far smaller at the beginning. Correct.
Yeah. Our original hope and goal was to keep these, but if there's a way as far as the grades could have gone, then we would have kept them. But our goal now is to replace them in kind in the same species with the 24-inch box.
Okay. Is there, other than the cost, is there a reason that you are pursuing this pre-cast fence design versus the more built-in-place version that's up the street at the recycling center?
One of the benefits is it doesn't have as deep and intrusive as a foundation system. It has kind of a grade beam foundation that's not as deep, or I apologize, it's got the little ones on the side that span over. So if there are existing trees, it can span over the tree root system as opposed to carving right through them.
Okay, thank you. And those are my questions. Anybody else with follow-up?
I did have a quick question.
Yes. Go ahead.
I think it was answered previous to your questions, Chair Moore. If we could go back to just that landscape plan. I just wanted to confirm, it's pretty easy to tell from the photo that the bottom of the fence basically is going to be fairly higher than the street and curb. And is the applicant saying, Mr. Kuykendall, sorry, does that also occur along South Cortina as you progress north up the street? That grade increases, therefore the bottom of the fence will increase in height.
Let me defer to Mike on the civil on his grade elevations. Mike, can you answer that? My understanding is just challenging. So that's because our goal was to preserve these trees, and everything we are getting back was that it was not doable.
Yeah. Sorry, John. This is Mike. Yeah, the fence will probably retain a portion of that. As you can see from those photos on Calle Cesar Chavez, it's it's pretty large grade difference. I would suspect that the fence would retain some of it, and then it would be sloped as well.
Okay. And then similar on the other side of the parcel. I guess what I'm looking at, my question was, there's a comment about the height of the fence. Essentially, the fence is going to get taller as the grade gets taller from outside the property. Correct?
Yeah, I would imagine that it would be more than 6 feet, if that's your question. Yeah, but not much more. I mean, I wouldn't imagine more than a foot retaining.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, anybody else with follow-up questions? Okay, then let's go to comments, please. Who would like to start? Mr. Black, go ahead.
Thank you. So just for clarification, Tristania conferta, that's the old name actually, but they're capable of getting 30 to 40 feet. They're a tall tree. I mean, they can be. And because the question was asked, they have a long way to go given what I see in those photographs. But so I guess my biggest concern is this is a lot of pavement and not much greenery to support it. And I'm particularly concerned about the lack of screening opportunities. When I say screening, I mean more than just a 6-foot fence with vines on it. I personally think that there should be tree massings all along that boundary. And I know it's been said that you know, you can't see it from the public way, but first thing that came to mind was, yeah, but we have a lot of train passengers that come through here and on a daily basis, and to look over and see, you know, garbage truck storage right next to the train tracks, it just doesn't rub me the right way. So, so I think any opportunity we have to encourage more landscaping, particularly along that railroad right of way, I think there must be a way physically to preserve those Tristanias on South Quarantina. At least it should be explored more, I suspect, because they are mature trees. And I would encourage the applicant to, you know, to drop that cast concrete fence back another foot or two. I mean, even in the picture that I saw on Cesar Chavez, it looked as if the planter where the existing chain link was wider than a foot or two. So I just think it's well worth the effort to provide more greenery, particularly on Cesar Chavez and South Quarantina. But my primary concern, I think, is along that south boundary. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Who is next? This is Vice Chair 6. Go ahead. You're muted.
You're muted.
Here we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I was having problems. I'm not happy with this proposal for reasons that Chair Member Black has begun to talk about. I think that if this was a building structure, you'd have significant setbacks and other on-ground functions that would take up a lot of the property and give other setbacks and so forth. I think that there should be a lot more setback from the street. I think that the saving of the trees along Quarantina could be easily saved easily by pulling that fence line back, whether it has to be 10 feet or 5 feet or whatever to do the grades. I think, you know, City Public Works could be happy to be coordinated with to find another dimensional configuration of the sidewalk, curb, and parkway to save those trees. I think that along Cesar Chavez, that I think that the fence could be pulled back at least in some areas, if not all, to provide more substantial landscaping in front of the fence. I think that 6 feet is not enough. I think it should be at least 8 to 10 feet high. 8 feet, I think 10 feet is, well, it all depends on how far back it gets. The further it's set back, the higher it can get. I think at least a minimum of 8 feet is required. I think that before we bless the non-interrupted, transparent chain link fence along the south and north property line, we need to see oblique views looking down South Quarantina and down Cesar Chavez to see what we're going to be looking at as we drive south on these two properties. I think David Mr. Black mentioned the train view. I think that care should be, I know that the train view has not been, there's a lot of unfortunate views of backyards and so forth. The train has to, passengers on the train look at, but I think that we should go and begin with each new project to improve and pay attention to that view. I'm concerned about the loss of skyline trees. I think this area in downtown here is it would be very important not to lose. And if lose skyline trees, and if we have to take them out because of functional reasons, there should be is added of significant heights project to mitigate the loss of those skyline trees. And I think that one of the photographs there shows the potential views from guests at the DoubleTree Inn, that if more significant, that I would like to see at least documented in the next go around. And also I think that the fence at South Quarantina should be a opaque or semi-opaque fence rather than a translucent, transparent chain link. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Who's next? Ms. Anderson, go ahead.
I also agree that there can be additional planting along the railroad. I don't think though it will do much good unless we are able to get trees in there because of the 2 stories on a train that you can see down no matter what. However wide the planting is, you're still going to be able to see in. So maybe study adding some trees that could potentially block the view in the future. And then along Cesar Chavez, possibly doing 2 layers of fencing and grading in some planting to give additional buffer versus just adding more planting on the front, maybe adding more planting on the property behind the property line. And as far as the fence material, I think it could be studied further to actually fit in with the existing buildings along Cesar Chavez. Those are my comments.
All right, Mr. Whalen?
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore. I'm in agreement with the other board's opinions about screening the southern edge. I think that is an important element for visitors. If one has ever taken the train and by bad example, go through Moore Park, I think we would be well to establish an identity of Santa Barbara as being a distinct place of landscape and trying to screen that massive concrete installation. That alone, that is, adding that much concrete, to my mind, needs to be counterbalanced with more planting area. Would extend that planter from minimum of 4 feet to even 5 or 6 feet to really get a good sized planting area, growth area along that entire railroad border on the south. In addition, I would like the applicants to consider that the parking areas be permeable or partially permeable areas to extend the amount of area that you could absorb some rainfall if and when we ever get it. I'm probably in disagreement with others. I think the 6-foot concrete fence is fine, seeing that it should really appear to be 7 feet or so tall with the elevation that are given on the street trees. And then finally agreeing with Mr. Black about preserving the Quarantina trees. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Olson, go ahead.
Yes, there was some early discussion about the gate, and I think the applicant said he thought it hadn't been decided yet, but would probably be chain link. I think I would have some concern about that gate. Also that, that maybe perhaps you could upgrade that gate from chain link. And otherwise, I agree with the comments of the other board members about the landscaping, the lack of landscaping, and trying to increase it where possible.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
I'll add, Chair Moore.
Okay, go ahead.
Just nothing new, really. I would agree with the other board members, just in general, the increase in landscaping. I also agree with Board Member Whalen, and I guess didn't disagree with the height of the fence. I think the 6 feet is fine, again, with the increase in elevation. If it's pushed back off the property, because it's so close to the property line, or so close to the edge, if it's pushed back a little bit, then, you know, an increase in height is, I think it's more appropriate. But as it's designed now or proposed, I think the 6 feet is appropriate.
Okay, thank you. The only thing that I have to add is that across the street on Cesar Chavez, we approved a project that had very substantial landscape and with setback fencing, etc. Now, that obviously was a structure of some size and height, but the potential to have garbage trucks that are backed up to this fence along the street line, I think is something to consider. And I agree there should be some sort of mitigation for that setback and additional volume of trees provided on the parcel to help screen that. Okay, so is that everybody's comments? And if so, would somebody like to make a motion? Sounds like it's a continuance back to the full board. I'll make that motion, that a continuance back to the full board with following comments, that the amount of perimeter landscaping shall be increased, and that the applicant shall study setting the fencing back on South Quarantina Street to allow for the existing street trees to remain and a sidewalk to be routed behind those trees as required. And that the applicant shall study providing a setback for the fencing along Calle Cesar Chavez Street to allow for additional landscape screening of the fencing, as well as additional trees on the property, and that the applicant shall study providing additional larger scale trees along the southern property line to screen the views from off of the property, including from the railroad and from other locations. And that the applicant shall study alternatives for the rolling gate or driveway gate other than chain link fencing.
I'll second that.
Okay.
I'll second that with further discussion.
Okay, go ahead.
Could you, with your comment on adding trees to the southern property line, could you say add trees and add landscape width appropriate?
Mhm.
Okay, and I think it would be nice to have documentation of the property from both streets looking south toward the property. Can we ask for that documentation in the next time?
Certainly. So provide additional photographs from the street level looking south down Quarantina Street, as well as south down Cesar Chavez. In my opinion, looking northward along Cesar Chavez as well.
And could we add some photo studies to make sure that views from, or maybe Chair Moore, it's not important to anybody else, but just to make sure that the DoubleTree Inn, just to get a sense of the views from the DoubleTree Inn, I guess it would be from the site back toward DoubleTree, more of those photos.
Mm-hmm. So photographs from the center of the site looking southward towards the railroad and adjacent hotel property.
If you would be so kind to add that to your.
Yes.
All right, thank
I
you.
will.
And did you also include an aerial view in yours, Chairman Moore, in the next presentation?
Yes, it's always a good idea for the applicant to include an aerial photo of not only the site, but of the surrounding parcels to give a better idea of the context.
Thank you.
Mr. Whalen?
Chair Moore, I would also like to add existing photos of their prototype concrete fence, especially if they're landscaped, so we have a sense of how they look and feel from the pedestrian's point of view.
Sure, you can add that. Okay, if that's everything, I think we can take our vote.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and start with Chair Moore.
Yes.
Vice Chair Sick,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Did we hear the motion? And I didn't hear that? Because before I say yes, it seems like we added a lot of things here. I'd like to hear the motion.
Okay, I mean, we do have the opportunity to review the minutes at their next hearing. But we're already in the vote, so let's continue, please.
Abstain?
and Board Member Whalen.
And yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. I think, are we clear to move on to item number 2?
Thank you, Chair Moore. The applicant is here for item number 2.
Okay, and we're on time.
We're fine on time. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so this is item number 2. This is 11 Anacapa Street, which is a continued item for concept review. This is a proposal for alterations and additions to an existing multi-tenant commercial building and parking area. The project involves converting 1,643 square feet of warehouse floor area to a wine tasting business, including a new 1,962 square foot, 45-seat roof deck. A second-story storage area and bar, second story and roof access will be provided with a new exterior stair and elevator. Additional parking would be provided with a 22 space mechanical lift parking structure, replacing 9 surface parking spaces for a total of 45 parking spaces. The Planning Commission approved a coastal development permit and a parking modification to allow 45 parking spaces rather than the required 68 parking spaces for the proposed combination of uses in the building. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. The project requires compliance with the project compatibility findings, the urban design guidelines, and outdoor lighting design guidelines. The project was last seen February 22nd of this year. All right, could we put our motion up for perfect? Let me get going into that. And if the board members could refresh their memories. Okay. All right. If we have our applicant, oh, looks like Mrs. McGuire has something to say.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I'm just going to introduce Mr. Tony Bauman as the case planner on this project to give a brief presentation on this project prior to the applicant's presentation.
Hello, Chair Moore. Considering the minutes that you were just looking at, I thought I should probably make a few comments in terms of the context or the place, the part of the process that the project is in. So the minutes that you're looking at is when the ABR continued the project to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission did approve the project. So now they're at the point where they're returning to the ABR for design review approval. And the applicant has changed the architectural style of the new winery tenant. So they're requesting sort of a check-in concept review to get comments from the board in order to pursue that new design. So that's it. I'm here if y'all have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Moore, question.
Yes. Go ahead.
Mr. Foreman, does the change in design necessarily have to go back to Planning Commission?
Oh, a good question, Vice Chair Six. It does not. It's consistent in floor area and et cetera with the coastal development permit. It's just a design change.
All right, thank you.
Okay. If we have our applicant ready. We do. Welcome back. Please note the 15-minute timer there on your screen. If you could keep your presentation to that, we would appreciate it. If you could introduce yourself and take us through your changes.
Thank you, Chair Moore and fellow board members. Ed Devasene, architect with DMHA. And we have a new design architect on this. Henry Lenny is with us. Can you hear us, Henry?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. All right. So yeah, thank you, staff, for bringing the board up to date. You saved me some time. So let's move right into it. Next page. Let's take a peek at the photos real quick. Bottom right-hand corner. Let's start there. Just to reorient the board to the building and the broader project. So previously, the ABR approved this beer garden restaurant. We added this deck, redid the parking, and this corner of the building. It's a 10,000 square foot building, 100 by 100. This tenant space is about 2,500. So really a corner of it. So let's move up to the next photo up. And so all the way on the left, you'll see that beer garden corner. On this side, along Helena, this is the corner that we are that's before you today for the Sunstone Winery. So it's in the same footprint as you previously saw, and this was approved at Planning Commission. We're just stylistically taking a different approach, a different direction based on the ownership. So this is part of the broader Sunstone Winery that's in the San Ynez Valley. And if you've ever been there, they kind of have an old world style that they wanted to make more evident here in the Funk Zone, just for brand and connection. So let's move on to the next pages, and I can talk about a couple things, but we'll hand it to Henry here to dive in. So next page, we don't need to cover the site demo. Here, let's go ahead and zoom in to the upper portion in the parking lot, just again to help reorient the board. So on the left-hand side, Helena Avenue, which we just saw, upper left-hand corner is the vantage point of that corner of the building. And then on the bottom right-hand side is the parking lift, which we'd previously proposed to you all. So today you're not seeing any changes to really the site plan or the parking lift. That's as is. So we're not really going to present that. That was well received last time, and we haven't made any refinements. So we're really looking at, in the upper left-hand corner here, the stair that's being added to the north of the tenant space in green and blue. Also, a portion of the tenant space is in orange for some common restrooms for all of the tenancies in the building as well. So let's keep moving because there's really not much to focus on here. Here's an enlargement of the lift, again, just for reference. Let's move past this. The lift roof, moving along. And then we're getting into the interior of the space. So some demo plans, let's move along. Demo of the roof. Again, not really changing here. And here in the proposed floor plan, there's not too many changes on the interior, but it's really the north elevation and the elevator tower and the stairs is really where the main design changes have been. So to the right-hand side of Beer Garden, there you can see the edge of the dining deck there. There is a wall in between the two in the lighter gray and some openings that connect to the opening of this space. And then the north along the property line there, that's a ramp that goes back down to the Helena Street. Thank you. And so we're really concentrating on this area just north of the building and really the main entrance and stair area. Next page. And here again is the roof layout as you've seen before. The stair coming up in the upper left-hand corner to the roof deck, which has been, I think it's about the same size you saw last time and as same as it went to Planning Commission. And then the bar to the right-hand side backing against the equipment on the roof deck for the Beer Garden restaurant. So really not too many major changes on any of these layouts, just some fine tuning of our stair, elevator tower, which got a little bigger because we created some shaft space behind it because they added a dumbwaiter on the inside as well. So, and to get some equipment and venting up and down. Next page. It's just the roof plan proposed, which you can come back to. Next page. All right, so here's where I'll hand it to Henry so he can talk about how the new direction kind of integrates to the rest of the building, and he'll walk you through some of the finer points. So broadly speaking, again, this is a check-in because we did change direction. We wanted to check in with the board and get a sense of what your thoughts were on this. We haven't updated civil or landscape. Next step, as our planner mentioned, would be to come back for a PDA, but we have to have a full and complete application. But before we did all that, we wanted to get your thoughts on this new direction. So hopefully you like it. So Henry, why don't you take us through the presentation?
Yes. Well, as Ed mentioned, we really had several components to deal with that we wanted to be careful in terms of how we mix things in this building. We know that the elevation on Helena Street, the desire is to leave it as is. And we, in fact, did that. Now, along the north elevation, which you're looking at the bottom, and if we can zoom in on that a little bit. Yeah, on this elevation, basically, we kept the steel windows, the steel staircase, but what we did is that we placed a wall that is open to the sky to cover part of the stairwell itself, but still let some of the stairwell exposed because we suspect that that is where people are either going to stand in the landings or come down all the way down to the bottom. And the steel windows remain. And one of the things that we were concerned about is to make sure that we transition from the beer garden to this building here in terms of basically color. The color would be the same as the beer garden, but the texture of the walls is going to be slightly rougher. And when I say rougher, what we're talking about is to build up the brown coat to create a little more undulation, not much, just a little bit. And then in addition to that, we get the walkway that is coming from the beer garden that will eventually daylight on Helena Street. And on the way there, we have an opening, and we have a detail of that to show you. That would be just a window with a wrought iron grill with some sort of an urn in front of it. And then there is the light fixture in the corner that you can see there with a cat bracket. And then the clients would wanted to see maybe a replacement of the existing banana trees with an Italian cypress. On the tower itself, we need to build up the tower so that we don't lose our fire rating. And the idea is to move the tower, the thickness of the tower over enough to provide some windows. The windows themselves will not have glass, but it would have some kind of translucent stone like onyx or something like that, that at night would be backlit, just to create a glow of it. On the top, if you recall, we had a bit of an elaborate pergola that covered the bar area on top, or the wine tasting part on top. That pergola did not change in terms of location, but what we did is made it entirely out of wrought iron that would be heavily hammered, and then perhaps put some vines, whether the grapevines or something else. We still need to coordinate with the landscape architect. And then in the very modern contemporary rail that you see coming down, we softened it a little bit by providing some more traditional elements to that. Now you see some posts at the bottom, and the idea is to have several of them that would have some sort of a light. And if we can switch back from this a bit, I think we have a detail of that. Okay, that detail must be on another page. Well, let's get close to the drawing on the right-hand side, the detail of where that opening is going to be. The idea is to have a very, very rustic ironwork that would be, that is typical of some of the Italian details of Florence or Venice and so on. The idea is to have the members themselves be about 1 inch in diameter, hammered, and then some sort of a penetration so that it's kind of the old-fashioned style of making the ironwork. And then just an urn, or it could be a terracotta pot there. The reason for this is that will bring light into a new entrance that we put in along Helena Street. And if we now move a little bit to the left, this would be the entrance. If you recall in the past, the whole stairway was exposed. This entrance will, it would be a ceremonial entrance, but we didn't have an entrance on Helena Street. So the idea would be to use some random sandstone rubble type steps. Again, we would have a textured surface for the stucco. And then on top of it, instead of having a keystone, the thought was that we can have something a little more artistic that can be commissioned out. And then on the left of that, you'll see the new access from all the way from the beer garden to this point. All right, if we can get on to the next page, I think that's it for this page. Okay, let's move on top, on the detail to the left, top detail, if we can zoom in on that. Here, the idea would be to actually provide something out of wrought iron with a column, and on top of the column, there would be a bulb that would light up at night. At this point, we're proposing this whole light fixture to be out of hammered wrought iron. And we still have to determine the color, whether it's going to be a Malaga green or something else. On the right-hand side, you'll see the pergola that I was talking about with some large, heavy, solid stock hammered posts, the same as we would have for the top portion of it where the vines or the landscaping would fall. Okay, we go down a bit. All right, now this is the elevation. This shows where the proposed new entrance would be. There is no change to the facade along Helena Street. Where we're showing the Italian cypresses currently, there is a banana tree, I believe. And then we need to work with the landscape architect it would be great if we could provide some sort of a vines that would drip alongside this. Also, you see in the background where the elevator tower is, we're proposing a tile roof there. The tower exists, the dimension of the tower remains exactly the same, but we would put some sort of a tile, a handmade tile, essentially with some dentils at the edge. This roof is also compatible to what happens within the site, and then right where Oko Sushi is and Flor de Maíz. So it would have some relationship to the whole complex that we have there. And that is really the proposal. So what we're here to do is to just change the cosmetic proposal, keeping it from a very, very industrial scheme that you saw previously and blending the two of them together. So I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Henry. On board, there's additional sheets as reference just as for elevations and the rest of the set if you wanted to go back and look at the parking structure. But this really concludes our presentation. I did want to add one other thing. We did, the board did ask for view sims from Helena. We did prepare those from a couple of vantage points for the Planning Commission. We have not updated those yet with this new direction. As you can imagine, that takes some technical time and place. So we're really just operating on these sketches that Henry did for the new direction. And if the board still desires those, we can do that when we come back next time, depending on the direction we get tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, so with that, we need to open public comment. If there's anyone out there in the audience that would like to address the board regarding this project, you can follow the instructions on the screen and raise your hand. Do we have anybody out there?
Thank you, Chair Moore. We do have many people logged in from the public. At this time, if you would like to speak on this item, please click on the raise lower your hand icon, and then we will call on you and you'll have 2 minutes to speak on this item. At this time, I do not see that anybody has clicked on the raise your hand button. Mary, have we received any written public correspondence for this item?
Thank you, Christina and board members. We did not receive any public comment for this item. Back to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, thank you. Then we will close public comment and go to questions. Who would like to start? Mr. Whalen, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore. Could the proponents please talk about the changes in surface elevation on the proposed? That is, how far does the tower stick out? You might go back to sheet 01, Mr. Bolton. How far does the new tower stick out? How far does the stair stick out? What are those changes in plane? Yes. Sheet A201A, yes. Thank you.
Well, what I am showing essentially is a 5 to 12 pitch on the roof. That translates to the very height of the tower, approximately 4 feet, 4.5 feet. Where you see the dentils at the eaves, that is where the existing tower ends currently, or what it was proposed. So we're just putting the tile roof right on top of it. The configuration of the stairwell does not change. That stays exactly like it was before. So the new elements in beginning with the tower is just the tile roof. We have the openings, so let's call them windows. We have the post for the light fixtures, and we have that window that would bring light into the lobby if you want, if you wish.
Mr. Whalen, sorry to interrupt, Mr. Laney. So Mr. Whalen, your question was specifically how thick does the wall adjacent to the property line get, or the wall that's parallel to the property line?
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore. To be more exact, without complete recall of the previous plan that was proposed, and I realize there are no changes in the massing, it would be helpful to know how much the proposed tower extends from the existing wall and how much the proposed stair extends from the existing building surface.
Oh, I understand. Sorry, I misunderstood your question. The wall itself should be, and it's probably going to change, I'm not sure, should be 18 inches thick. The thickness of the tower, I suspect, would be an additional 6 to 8 inches. Now, what we're not showing here underneath.
Actually, Henry, why don't we go to the plan? Okay. I'm still seeing the elevation sheet. Can we go to, it would be sheet number 9 in the set, A103. The elevator tower, yeah, the elevator tower is coming out about 3 feet from the north wall plane. So it's about 2'3" for our shaft, and then we're adding this secondary wall for the windows. That's where we're going to get to about 3 feet.
Very good. And the stair, if you could scan over to the left.
Sure.
It looks like it's about 7 or 8 feet.
That's correct. It's, I think it's about, yeah, it's just over 8 feet to the inside face of the wall. About 8'3", and then the wall, as Henry mentioned, is about 18 inches.
All right, and then if you could go back to the previous elevation, I understand that the new arch covers over the existing fenestration. Does the window itself get replaced, but in the same place? And so it's tucked up under the arch, is that correct?
That is correct. In other words, there again, the thickness of where it says sandstone would be thick enough, but the idea is that the still window configuration does not change. We're just clipping the corners with it.
Yes.
Now, from a practical point of view, we may just simply conform to the configuration of the arch, and it would be set back. So that wall could be as thick as 12 inches.
Well, let me clarify for the chair and board member Whalen. The Henry, it's a little confusing because Henry's coming in a context of what we've been designing. So what's existing and proposed is may not be clear. So let me clarify. So the steel entry and windows, that is all new fenestration within the existing wall. So the existing windows there, as you saw in the photo, would be reconfigured for this new opening.
Very good. That answers my question. And one final small question, if you could go to the sheet that has more of the details, one that showed the front door. Yes, the one in the upper left corner, 03. What is the material between the landscape hedge and the building? Is that a fence?
You know, we need to, the idea is that we have a landscapes, proposed landscape, a landscape strip there anyway. My thought personally, instead of putting a fence, if we could see the possibility of sloping the soil so that we wouldn't have to have a fence, but we would have some landscaping.
So it's some kind of landscape element. That answers all of my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Who's next? Vice Chair Six, go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
If we could go back out of this, is this the second or first sheet? Yeah, the next sheet, please. Is the railing on the upper deck glass railing, and was that proposed last time?
I don't know, Ed, do you remember that?
No, it was not glass railing. We had planter rails there. So this is just, I think, an idea, Henry. I don't know if you had a specific direction you were thinking for this rail, or?
No, not really. The idea that the drawings that you proposed initially, Ed, I think had some cables, I believe, if I remember correctly, some posts and cables.
Right.
And that would work. Because then there is a planter there, and that would be an opportunity to completely cover that rail.
Okay, thank you. So again, on this elevation, the existing roof eave on this elevation extends out, what, a couple feet, correct? And then it would, on Mr. Lenny's drawing, that eave is projecting, continuing to project along from the surface of the wall, but then it gets cut off at the corner there, just above the E in sandstone.
Vice Chair Six, to the chair, yes, actually existing condition, there is no eave on that north face. It has it's been cut back. So the only eave does project, as you saw in the photo, along Helena, but it is cut back all the way through, even on the beer garden side.
So there's the shadow line in the original drawings is incorrect.
Well, I think there is a 2x4 trim currently, if I remember correctly from the photographs, but there's no
minimal.
Yeah, that's all there is, and I think my shadows got a little too deep.
So it's just a belly band type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. All of my questions.
Okay, anybody else? Questions? No? Okay. I guess kind of a larger question I have for the applicant is, how do you see this design melding with the beer garden side as well as the other existing elevation along Helena Street.
The most, I actually did a sketch, but I didn't think it made it into the set here. Along the beer garden, that elevation, which would be the east elevation, you would see the tile roof, and then you will see a wall with some windows towards the ocean side. What my intent was to repeat the rectangular windows that you find on the beer garden, so it can have some relation to the beer garden. If you step back enough on Anacapa Street and you look at it, there may not be really, we have glass block, for instance, on the beer garden, but in this case, the size and the randomness would stay the same, and we would probably paint the interior of those rectangles approximately the same color as the beer garden glass.
Okay, but that's not, is that evident on any of these drawings?
Well, I think we missed, it was done, but I think we missed that.
Can we go, we'll go to the previous elevation. I think it shows in there.
That's it?
See the beer garden little windows.
Yes, well, on the east elevation, which is sort of looking towards the left, there is a blank wall, and that blank wall, unfortunately, we don't have it as part of the set. That blank wall will, let me see, well, this would help a little bit. I wonder if we have the drawings from the previous submittal that would show what's happening.
I mean, I guess it's, my question is a larger one. Like how do you see the proposed aesthetics of this particular little corner of the building relative, tying into what's already been done, as well as the existing elevation on the backside of the beer garden? How do you, I guess aesthetically, how does this all tie together in your mind?
Well, to clarify, the wall of sandstone relative to the face of the wall of the beer garden is significantly back. Well, you can see it right there. It's quite a bit back. The articulation, if you ever notice it or if you can ever see it, would have the same color of the plaster, and it would also have the rectangular openings, although in this case, there would not be windows, there would be just 8-inch indentations into it or something like that. And so, again, the only place that you would see that would be if you're across the street on Anacapa Street looking at the whole complex. So there would be some aesthetic connection to that. Now, on the oceanside elevation, we're too far back to see anything, really. From the public, anyway.
Okay. Anyone else with questions for the applicant? No? Okay, then let's go to our comments, please. Who would like to start? Remember, this is a concept, so they're looking for kind of high level comments. Is this a good direction, etc. That kind of thing. Mr. Whalen, go ahead.
Sure, I'd be happy to start out. We'll see how things fall out. I believe the additions are rather handsome in their details, form, and proportion. They're well thought out and could lend that character that they're looking for. However, there seems to me to be a reliance on the landscape, both around and on the building, to make this completely successful. And we know that the beginning of the day, at least, the landscape won't be present. I have some reservations about that because in this elevation, I do question the ability of the addition to blend in, if you will, to the existing building. The trellis as proposed to be a bit undersized in the columns. If my memory is correct, there were only 2 inches. And to add to that, the stair rail, as we see here on detail 01, seems to be out of character, and perhaps the use of hand-hammered iron or some more Tuscan, Northern Italian, Mediterranean inspired railing would be preferable. Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, Vice Chair Six, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I'm having a difficulty finding this as compatible with the rest of the building. You know, Henry's detailing is gorgeous in its pieces and so forth, but there is, you know, and the building is eclectic, but this design and the way it holds together in this one portion of the building and completely obliterates the original box that the building is about is, you know, gives it just is not working for me. It's schizophrenic rather than eclectic. I think that if you know, so I think, you know, with the previous proposal, there was more of the industrial look and the sympathetic, and I think the previous proposal, the beer garden, you know, with its designs are gorgeous details applied, but respecting and showing the basic box. Here we don't see any of the basic box. I think if this client wants to identify with the Tuscany or the Spanish look, that these gorgeous details should be, I don't think pasted upon is correct, but I think they should interrupt and be applied to and see the original box behind. I think the tower, you know, is, you know, as a piece of architecture is gorgeous. You know, again, it's totally divorced from the idea of the original box and the original architecture. So I'm having a real problem here with this direction. Again, you know, if the flavor wants to be Tuscany, there should be, well, I'm repeating myself. So it's, I think these wonderful features could be in front of and applied or not serendipitously, but imaginatively juxtaposed to a background of an architecture that respects the box and the original architecture around it.
Okay, thank you. Who else has comments?
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Olson.
I'm very impressed with the creative solution here, and especially to the new entrance to this, and as well as the stairway. I think those are excellent solutions to and preferable to the previous. Mr. Whalen mentioned the fact that the elevations rely somewhat on landscaping. And so I think they're quite nice to look at, but they also are emphasizing the problem that both Mr. Six and Mr. Moore are saying, is that this building doesn't match very well with the other building. But problem is that perhaps if he had drawn all of those vines on the old building, we might be not saying that. But I don't think these vines are going to be here. And I think the building has to stand on its own without them. And I think it will. But the issue here is still how this new addition fits with the previous addition and the old elevation, which I think is the west elevation. I'm concerned about that also.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to add anything? Mr. Newman, go ahead.
I may be able to add just a little bit. I'm not going to say anything too different. At first, I thought, I was really concerned or confused about the direction, but then I thought it's the funk zone, so maybe this works. But after hearing the comments, I think just to kind of narrow it down, I think when I see it with the added landscaping in the rendering, it just seems the building seems to tower over the rest of the elevation. So maybe if that piece of it could be studied a little more, maybe for me, maybe that would help, but it doesn't seem to fit scale wise, I think, with the rest of the elevation.
All right, thank you. Who else we had? Go ahead, Ms. Anderson.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the comments that have been said already. I think the tower adding the roof on top just makes it too tall. I think that this style is just not in keeping with the existing industrial style that we've been looking at for the past year. And I cannot support this architectural style for this portion of the building.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Black?
Yeah, I would generally agree with those comments. My first impression when I saw this elevation was, I'd really like to see what it looked like without the vines. I mean, it gives it a certain character that I'm not sure works. Yeah, and I heard the words old world, and I understand it. And like someone said before, it is the funk zone, so maybe it would work, but I think it's just a little too much when you consider what's existing on the rest of that building. But I appreciate the detailing and what's been done, but I am particularly bothered by the vines as it's illustrating what's being proposed here. So yeah, I think it maybe just needs to be cleaned up somehow, but to make it more compatible with the rest of the building. That's all.
Okay. Yeah, I too I'm having a hard time understanding how this fits in with the rest of the building, particularly on the western elevation. That's something that elevation in particular, it is, eclectic in its makeup, but it's something that works on its own. And I just do not understand this approach to the aesthetics of the exterior on this. So I can't support it either. Would somebody like to make a motion? Go ahead.
I'll attempt. I think that this would be a return to the full board with the following comments: that the proposal as presented is not compatible with the rest of the architecture of the building. Some suggestions to make it more compatible were to reduce the scale of the tower, to reduce, at least rendering wise, reduce the amount of vegetation shown and present a more realistic rendition of what would be possible. Third possibility is to respect throughout this area the basic massing and forms and style of the box and the architecture and the balance of the building, and to introduce on top of that basic structure, use that basic structure as a canvas to provide Tuscany detailing and features to identify the new direction of ownership. I think that it would be a number 5. A new item altogether would be to render the proposal consistently among all of the impacted elevations, consistently from existing to new proposed. I think that, I don't think I missed anything, but I'm open to adds to that.
All right. Do we have a seconder of that motion?
I'll second the motion.
All right, seconded by Olson. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, may I just make a comment here?
Hold on. Sorry, we're in discussion on our end here.
Okay.
Ms. Anderson, go ahead.
Mr. Six, can you clarify what you mean by introducing Tuscany? I think you said Tuscan design features to the existing box building.
Yeah, I think, as the existing Helena Street elevation, there are, very eclectic features and decor and decoration and ads and so forth that are on the box itself, but the box is still reading through all of that. So, for instance, if the walls in the area were in line with and in the same character as where the original box was, and these beautiful elements were inserted into them or on top of them or in front of them, I think that would be a direction to go. I would support something like that. Does that clarify it?
I think so. So you don't mind the Tuscany style in this location?
No, I don't mind an eclectic assortment of Tuscany features upon the basic canvas that matches or more closely harmonizes with the basic box.
Okay.
Okay. Vice Chair Six, would you consider changing your motion to read one board member suggests, and then your thoughts about the detailing.
Yes. Yes, okay, so, Mary, I think, I think one of the ways to make this, I think I would like to say that the existing Tuscany proposal does not harmonize and is not right for this building. But then that my second comment regarding introducing the Tuscany details and so forth upon a more harmonious box like architecture, that would be one board member. That's what we're after. Chair Moore, does that explain it?
I think so, yeah. Mr. Noon, go ahead.
Yeah, perhaps maybe this will clean it up. Maybe if we just took out the language of Tuscany, referencing that as it's designed isn't compatible, but then encouraging the applicant to move forward with a form of Tuscany or Tuscany detail, maybe removing that, because if they come back and it doesn't have anything Tuscany in it, is that acceptable? We're not trying to push them in a design direction, correct?
Well, I'm confused now. I think because the applicant and ownership wants to have some kind of old world sense to it, I think that it could happen. But it's gotta respect the box.
Okay.
So I think we've made a real mess out of the motion, so let's.
Yeah, if we could read it back, that'd be helpful.
Read it back.
Or start
Alright.
over.
And Mary, be ready to be interrupted.
All right, no worries. So the motion is to continue the project indefinitely back to the full board with the following comments. Number one, the proposal as presented is not compatible with the rest of the architecture of the building. Some
Period.
suggestions get, yes,
Wait,
period.
Period. Okay. Yes. New item?
So some suggestions to make it more compatible are reduce the scale of the tower. Number three, reduce, at least rendering wise, the amount of vegetation shown and provide a more realistic rendition of what would be possible.
Okay.
Number four, respect the basic massing, forms, style.
Hold on. So that would be a brand new item on its own, and that would say one board member suggests.
Okay, so you want me to take out the entire sentence that says respect the basic forms? Or
No.
that's separate?
That's, so the next item, you have two sub items under the second comment.
Right,
Now go to a whole new comment
okay,
and start it with one board member suggests that.
all right, so let's see, where was that? One board member suggests that the applicant introduce Tuscany details upon a more harmonious box-like architecture.
Correct. There you go.
Okay. And then the next point I had was render the proposal consistently among all impacted elevations for both new and existing.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think that's, yeah, I'm happy with that.
Seconder is happy with it.
Okay.
More, is that more in your idea?
Yes. Yeah. Is there any other discussion? No? Okay, let's take a vote, please.
All right, I'll start with Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Stokes,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's take a 2-minute pause if we could, and then we'll come back. Thank you. All All right, we're going to reopen our ABR agenda for October 18th. We are on to item number 3. Saw our applicant, or one of our applicants. I will read the project description. This is item number 3. This is 920 Summit Road. This is a continued item for concept review. This is a revised project description and is a proposal for improvements to the Montecito Club property, including alterations to the as-built sports court located at the event lawn. Alterations include relocating the batting cage between the golf cart building and the tennis courts, relocating the pickleball courts to the tennis courts, and removal of the as-built volleyball court. The previously proposed basketball court, children's sliding hill, and dry stack boulder retaining walls will be retained. Project includes a new practice putting green and associated landscaping, directional signage, benches, and hardscape. Planning Commission review and approval is required for a conditional use permit amendment. No final appeal decision will be made at this hearing. The project requires consistency with the project compatibility findings, and we last saw it May 3rd of this year. Okay, if we can show us, there we go, perfect. Our motion. So we can scan through that quickly. All right. And we have our applicant, and if the applicant could note the 15-minute timer there, if you could contain your presentation to that, would be helpful for our process. And it looks like we have some staff comments before we get going.
Thank you, Chair Moore. The planner on this project is Ms. Pilar Plummer, and she'll be giving an introduction to this project.
We lost her.
Ms. Plummer's having a very slight technical issue. I am going to see if we can get her back in a second.
Okay.
Hello, apologies, I was having an audio issue for a minute. Thank you. I just have some really brief staff comments for this project since a little bit has changed since you last reviewed it. So this is an additional concept review for improvements to the Montecito Club. Since the last review, staff has determined that the improvements to the event lawn with the as-built sports court necessitated a conditional use permit amendment. And you'll recall at the last time we were calling it a substantial conformance determination. So that element has changed. In addition, the event lawn improvements with the sports court went to Planning Commission and was continued to study some of the elements of that area. And I'll let the applicant cover what all of those entail, but some of the elements have been relocated to other locations. So as part of your discussion today, staff is looking for some general comments as to the aesthetic appropriateness of these changes at the event lawn area, as well as the new locations for a couple of the other sports amenities. And I'll be here throughout the meeting if you have any questions. I do want to point out one item though, and it's in the agenda language. The batting cages, which were previously at the sports court, have been relocated closer to the main clubhouse building. And so they're under the jurisdiction of the Historic Landmarks Commission. They'll be reviewing that item at a separate hearing. But I just wanted to note that since it's in the description. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, if the applicants could introduce themselves and take us through their changes.
First, thank you, Chair Moore and members of the board. I'm Steve Welton from SEPS, agent for the owner, and With me today is Sam Mathis from Earthform, landscape architect. As Pilar mentioned at our last planning commission hearing, the planning commission asked us to reconsider and study alternative locations for both the batting cage and the pickleball courts that were shown previously. And accordingly, after some review, the club's proposing now to relocate the pickleball courts to one of the existing tennis courts. And the batting cage is being proposed, as Pilar mentioned, to a location just north of the cart barn, but within the purview of the HLC. As you may remember, some of you may remember this property is within both ABR and HLC jurisdiction. And we'll be looking at going to the HLC in next week. So in addition to those two changes, the applicant proposed to remove the as-built sand volleyball court that you saw previously, as well as an uncovered trellis that was located on the north side. And with one exception, the rest of the project remains the same as you previously reviewed it, including the kids sliding hill and the basketball court, which is in a similar location to what was contemplated under a previous ABR case and substantially conforming to determination. The one modification that I referenced is that the applicant's proposing a practice putting green for club members, and Sam will provide you some of the particulars of that aspect right now. So I'll hand it off to you, Sam.
Thank you, Steve. So can you go to the next drawing? Let's see if we can get to a blow up event lawn. Thank you. Maybe one more, the one that's colored. There we go. That'll be very helpful. So as Steve mentioned, the sand volleyball court, the covered trellis area that was up against the stone wall, kind of tucked against the slope, and the two pickleball courts, the active courts as well as the batting cage, have been removed from this upper event lawn area. We still will retain basketball court. We're adding the ADA accessible ramps and access from the parking lot to get to this upper event lawn with a brick walkway, all of the same the pitch needed for wheelchair and accessibility. The program originally, as you recall, we had some practice heat bays up here. That was determined to not be compatible at that time, and we did bring to you a building that now has a simulated golf practice facility that's on the west side of the courts. So the active play courts have been removed from this area based on input from neighbors, and overall the decided to make this area a softer, quieter area. So there is a practice putting green for the golf course here. There's also the event lawn that you can see, and all the landscaping we proposed has not changed. The basketball court, but if you notice, the pickleball courts now are located down low on the bottom southwest side of the tennis courts. There's 4 ball courts, there's accessibility to those, and those are now behind the large slope and screening, and they're down below a retaining wall, so there shouldn't be any sound issues other than what's always been there, the tennis court activity. The batting cage, at the very bottom of the page, you'll see the cart barn. At the back of the cart barn, behind it on the north side, between a retaining wall and the cart barn, will be the batting cage that was previously up retaining wall on the event lawn. So those two active things are quite a ways away from the north property line, and much of what's presented now is very quiet and passive activity. So those changes, what we're bringing back to you as a revision based on input from the Planning Commission, the neighbors, and the ownership. So with that, I'll close that part of the public comment, bring it back, or bring it back to Steve for any. We're not the public, we're the applicant, sorry.
Yes, that's right. You're yeah, one thing, Sam, thank you very much. One thing is just for this board, you mentioned the golf simulator building, and that is in the purview of the HLC. So they're reviewing that, or have reviewed that previously, but it isn't before this board. And then just with regards, Yeah, and Sam, I thought maybe you just touch a little bit upon on the surface materials and the undulations of the putting green in case they're curious about that.
Well, no, that's good that you helped me bring that up. This putting practice area will be a synthetic grass, so there will not be any water or maintenance. So the sustainability of that portion of the upper lawn area will be very low maintenance, durable in essence of sustainability. The event lawn is a paspalum grass that matches the golf course, which is salt tolerant for the reclaimed water that's being used, and it's very, very hardy and uses very little water compared to a normal Bermuda even. So the brick, again, is the path material, which matches all the walkways throughout the majority of the clubhouse entrance and around the back of the main clubhouse outdoor useful areas. And of course, the basketball court is a panel system that actually bounces the ball well and quiets the bounce quite a bit. So those are the main materials that are used throughout, as well as the stone walls, dry stack stone walls that are in keeping with all the walls, the retaining walls of the parking lot and throughout the club property. Summarizes the material, I think, Steve.
Yeah, I think so. And then the undulations on the course are projected just for competitive interest or be no more than about 18 inches either direction. And as Sam mentioned, there's some artificial turf proposed, but that's similar to the turf that's out there right now between some of the areas of the courts. And it's being used already in the course. I think that wraps us up, but we're certainly happy to answer any questions from any members of the board.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will open public comment. If there's anybody in the public that would like to address the board about this project, you can follow the instructions on screen, and that will alert staff to like to make a comment. Do we have anybody out there?
Thank you, Chair Moore. We do have several members of the public that have joined the webinar. I don't see that anybody has raised their hand indicating they'd like to speak on this item. Mary, have you received any written public correspondence for this item?
Thank you, Christina and board members. We did receive one email from David Hamilton, which was distributed to the board before this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, and we will close public comment and go to questions from the board. Who has questions? No questions. Vice Chair Six, go ahead.
Just, it's obvious that the input from public and planning commission were about noise and being passive. Just the question is, the basketball court was approved with that quieting material on the court by planning commission and public?
Chair Moore and member Six, no, we're not approved at this stage. When I was referring to the previous review, we had submitted this basketball court, and I'm not sure if you were on the board at that time, and the golf hitting bays that Sam mentioned at a previous time under a substantial conformity determination. And however, that design review did expire, and so we're asking for reapproval of the basketball court. This is similar to the court that you saw the last time around. It's in the same location. The material proposed at that time was just an athletic court material. It wasn't specified.
So the possible, it's not our purview, but just curiosity, the noise generated by the basketball court would be not reviewed by planning commission again?
Chair Moore and member Six, yeah, it's going back to planning commission, and I'm sure they'll I see Polaris on here, but yes, they'll review everything again. We're going back to planning commission for a review.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Answer my question. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Olson. Go ahead.
Yes. Would you give us the outlay of the lighting in that? I guess in this area of this site plan that we're looking at?
Chair Moore and Member Olson, we don't have any lighting proposed for this area.
There will be no
No
lighting.
night lighting proposed. No night lighting.
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? A couple of questions on my end. Is there fencing still proposed around the basketball court?
Chair Moore,
No,
no, there's no fencing.
Okay. And is there, as you come up from the new accessible van space, there was some elevation change. Last time there was some sort of a wall, a site wall or something along there. Is that still there as a part of this?
I
No,
don't
Chair
believe
Moore,
it's-
there's
but
no-
Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, we're coming from the upper side of the parking lot, Chair Moore, and because of that, the grade changing onto that ramp you will look at in detail is only 5%. And so we're really kind of so close, we don't need a wall behind or anywhere close to it. It's a very flat, low approach to that walk. So there's no site wall, no seat wall, no other built structure in that area. It's all grass and brick flush to the grass.
Okay. And then just for clarification, if we could zoom in on the tennis court area.
Mhm.
A little closer. There we go. So there was tennis court surface below the pickleball courts. Is that
Chair Moore, yes, that's correct. We essentially took over one of the courts and converted it to pickleball.
okay?
They
And
reset that, and they've divided it with planter boxes.
okay. And if we can slide the image over so we see more of the pickleball court, please. Okay. So all the perimeter planting is existing to remain. Really no visible change other than striping on the courts.
Chair Moore, yes, except for what Sam mentioned, the hedging material. If you actually zoom out a little bit, you can see there's a pretty good elevation difference between the event lawn and this area as well. So there's about a 15-foot drop.
Okay. All right. Anybody else with questions? Vice Chair 6, go ahead.
Did we zoom back up to the putting green? And one of my pet peeves is artificial turf. Is there any way to, at least in the upper right-hand corner, could that rectangle be softened and the real planting area be a more natural line to putting green number 5 and still maintain walking space around that playing green?
I think the synthetic turf allows for a lot of durability and very low maintenance and no water. So Chair Member 6, I think this is the practice facility that the ownership would like. And we do have bounded by real grass on the parking lot side and below. And so on the backs of the stone wall, we have bougainvillea and rosemary grass over and rhododendrons planted quite gently and nice around this practice facility. But the slight undulations and the alignment of 12 holes is for a good practice session. And it's preferred at this to not have to detail and maintain kind of a more elaborate putting surface. And the synthetic allows us to do that.
All I'm asking is that hard line on the upper right-hand corner, that 90-degree border there between it and the planting area, could that be softened with a more natural curve?
Sure. I mean,
yeah,
you're saying north of where the ramp turns, that area?
Yeah, that the hand is on it right now. Could that that be more naturalized and organic and give a little bit more to the planting area?
I think that'd be a nice thing. You can study that.
Yeah, we can study
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Before we go to comments? No? Okay, let's move to comments, please. Who'd like to start? Mr. Black, go ahead.
I think the revised proposal is, meets the needs of all the parties involved, particularly the neighbors. It appears to me anyway. And I think it's more than acceptable as submitted.
Okay, who's next? Vice Chair Six, go ahead.
I concur with the exception of softening the upper right-hand corner of the area of the synthetic grass to have a more natural curve and to give a little bit more to the natural planting area as indicated.
All right. Does anyone have anything else to add? No? Okay. Vice Chair Six, you want to make that into a motion?
Sure. I would suggest a this is no appealable. We can't make a.
Right.
We give this. I need staff. Can we give preliminary? What is it? Conformity findings, compatibility findings for this?
Board Member Six, what we're looking for at this hearing is an indefinite continuance to Planning Commission with positive comments about the new changes, and then including the project compatibility analysis findings in a preliminary sense for Planning Commission's review.
Can we just say that rather than go through the whole list?
Unfortunately not.
I think it would be beneficial for Planning Commission to see your comments formally in the motion. Thank you.
All right, so I would propose a motion to send this on indefinitely, time-wise, to the Planning Commission with the proposal to be very acceptable in its design and its use of the different uses of the areas are very acceptable and appropriate to the neighbors.
Let's try and, sorry, Vice Chair Six, let's focus on the aesthetics. Let's not worry about the uses or the locations, etc.
So we find the aesthetics of this design very acceptable. Number two, that there should be a minor adjustment to the perimeter of the synthetic turf with the putting green in the upper right-hand corner. And number three, that the project preliminarily can be found to be compatible as it is number one, consistent with the design guidelines with this location, especially as there is no significant structures and the material used are all compatible with the architecture. Number two, it's compatible with the architecture character of the city and the neighborhood for the same reason. Number three is not applicable because there is no structure to affect size, mass, bulk, scale, and height. Number four, it is sensitive to the adjacent landmark of the club, as it is again, has no significant structure and is appropriate and harmonious with the grounds and landscape surrounding the landmark. Number 5, there are no public views of the ocean or mountains affected. And number 6, it's a very appropriate use of open space and landscaping, as that is all about.
Second the motion.
Okay, any discussion? No? Let's take a vote, please.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and start with Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Block,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
You're muted, I believe.
I was muted, yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you. And we can move on to item 4, which is 421 South Milpa Street. This is a continued item for project design approval. This is a proposal for improvements and accessibility upgrades to the Blue Sands Inn. Project includes exterior alterations to the hotel structure, including a new stair tower, site improvements, including changes to landscaping and pool area, and a new exterior patio along Milpa Street, and miscellaneous interior upgrades, including converting the manager's bedroom to a hotel room. Staff hearing officer approval of a front setback modification and coastal development permit was granted on September 22nd of this year. Project design approval was requested, and project requires compliance with the project compatibility findings, the urban design guidelines, and outdoor lighting design guidelines. And we last saw this on August 23rd of this year. Okay, if we could see the motion from the last time, we can scan through it, please. And if you recall, and hopefully this is what staff can weigh in on, is what this last review was specific for that setback modification, I believe. So I think maybe Ms. Plummer could tell us a little bit more in detail about where we are today and what's next.
Thank you, Chair Moore. So yes, as it was noted in the project description, between your last meeting and today, the project did go to the staff hearing officer for review of the coastal development permit and the front setback modification. Both were approved. So the project is eligible to receive project design approval at today's hearing, and it would return at a later date with final details for final approval. And I'll be here throughout the meeting if you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone have questions before we get going for staff? Are we all set?
I have one comment. It seems to me that we're only dealing with item number 4 in our comments. Is that true?
That's a comment. That's a question for staff, I believe.
Thank you, and through the chair. Yes, that was the primary focus of your comments from the last review. You provided positive comments related to the street patio. So I believe the main discussion from the last meeting was related to design of the stair tower and then the spa and fireplace amenities.
Thank you.
Okay. Looks like we have our applicant here. If you could welcome back, and please note the 15-minute timer there on screen, and go ahead.
You're muted.
Looks like you're muted.
Sorry. You're muted.
Oh, I thought I was green. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm Dawn Terry, the architect for the project. We're here today for project design approval. If you remember, we'd received City Council approval for the requested modification for improvements within the front yard setback prior to our last hearing. I'm going to go through the presentation as quickly as possible, and if I've left anything out, you can ask me during the question period of the meeting. As was stated, it's primarily item number 4, the stair element and the planter along the east property line. I think we should just go directly to the last page of the photo page document, if we could, please. The last page of that document. Oh, there it is. Got it. This is an image just to remind you of the current condition. You can see the neighboring condominium in the background. There are 3 upper level windows from this condo that look out onto the pool area of the hotel. And it's the view from the northernmost bedroom window to the left that has been the concern of the neighbor. It's hidden by bamboo, large bamboo in this photo, but is now visible because the bamboo has been trimmed. Please turn to the site plan, which is sheet T2.0. It's page 4 of your submittal. As you're aware, the project consists of a renovation of the existing hotel and the relocation of the second eastern stairs to the upper level rooms. If you zoom in on the pool area for a second, the relocation of these stairs is in order to provide pool ADA accessibility and a pool lift, as well as a much needed renovation for the pool amenities for the hotel guests. The current location of the stairs bifurcates the pool deck, which results in the inability to access the pool from the pool lounge area. Relocating the stairs results in the ability to reroute the exit pathway away from the pool entirely and allows for the addition of a pool lounge area, new pool seating, lounge seating, and a new spa and access to the spa. Please go to T2.3, which is page 7 of the plans. As a reminder, we initially proposed a higher stair element. The last iteration of the stairs was reduced in height so that the tower is now just a separate roof and not a tower. The square footage of the tower element was also reduced from 137 square feet to 95 square feet, and the massing was reduced from 2,486 cubic feet to 1,568 cubic feet. The height was reduced from 23 feet 4 inches to 19 feet 8 inches, a 3-foot 8-inch reduction. Please turn to the last page of the plans, which is R1.0. In the last meeting, it was suggested that we study an optional design for the stair element that might result in an improved view for the neighbor. I mentioned in that meeting that we had studied this option but rejected it because the design was inferior and it created an awkward rake wall on the west side of the stairs. And you can see that rake wall on the lower right-hand portion of the drawing if you zoom in on that. Right there on the stair element on the west side, which is the left side. That was the study that we did. I think it was Richard Six's comment that we study that. So now zoom out again to the whole page and refer to the upper right-hand corner, the 2 superimposed images in that area. If you could zoom in on those. The blue outline represents our proposed design. You can see in the left-hand photo the difference between our original tower design in the red and the reduced height in the blue. The green represents the study that we did, and that was Richard Six's recommendation. And you can see that the compromised massing of that green element does not give you additional ocean view, but it does give you a little bit more view of the street. Please turn to page 8 of the submittal. It's T 2.4. This lower south elevation depicts what we feel is a better design. It's in the lower left corner. The odd rake roof is removed. And even though we don't get a tower that we originally wanted, we can still have what appears to simulate a tower because we have a true south-facing hip roof. Now regarding the study, the planter wall and the east property line at the pool lounge area, please turn to page 19. It's sheet A 3.2. We're proposing a green wall at the property line to the north of the fireplace, running north to the tower element. As well, it's also running, we decreased the massing of the fireplace and we increased the planting to the north of that fireplace as well. We were able to do that. Now please go to page 9, which is sheet T 2.5. This, the lower portion of this page shows the difference between what we previously proposed and the new. So the image on the left is the previously reviewed landscaping and fireplace element, and the one on the right is our proposed element. We believe that this design provides the desired buffer that the board was suggesting, but without losing the very valuable floor area. A 2-foot planter will not provide increased privacy between the two properties. Because of the elevation change, we feel that the green buffer provides the necessary buffer between the two properties and allows for our pool lounge chairs to face the pool and a seating arrangement on the fireplace side. Also note that we're proposing the green wall structure because the existing retaining wall is not on our property, so we technically cannot attach a vine to that wall. It will eventually be a solid green wall. This concludes the end of the architectural portion of the presentation. And if the board feels that the project is ready for project design approval, we would very much like to request to come back for final on consent. I'd like to turn the presentation over to Chris Gilliland, our landscape architect, for a few comments about the improvements and the minor alterations that we've made to the landscaping plan. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you, Don. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we can just go to the landscape plan, which is probably the last page in the set. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. So let's see, starting out at the front facing the street, there's no changes to that entry or the patio outdoor terrace out front. But as we move around to past the front door, we've tried and we really kind of honed in on the pool area with the landscape, which we hadn't done last time. So we added planters wherever we could, which includes just to the, I guess that'd be the north of the main entrance, a little planter there at the corner of the building, and more so on either end of the arbor. We added 2 significant planters there, which the one on the right really helps the view as you enter the property so that you're not just looking at the end of that arbor. We get some kind of significant greenery there to help screen and soften that arbor element and also provide a nice setting for the interior of the pool area. We also, just to the right of that, added a little vine pocket to the base of that wall, and we would then train the ficus, the creeping fig, on that wall and train it back so that, between the parking area and the pool, that wall be green, vegetated, so that when cars back into it, I should say, we won't see the damage to the wall. And then as we move closer towards the back and the fireplace, Dawn covered the screening and the buffering from the neighbor. We were able to get a pretty significant planter in either side of the fireplace. On the right side, if you're facing the fireplace, is an existing guava tree, so we'd be retaining that and adding maybe a dwarf or semi-dwarf lemon or other citrus tree to the left side of the fireplace there. And then, of course, training vines on that trellis element to help soften the wall there. And we've added a sort of raised planter on the back side of that stair element, so we can train vines up on that wall and they'll crawl around to the front of it as well to help soften the view from the neighbor, so they're not just staring at a blank white wall. So I think that'll, we really try to just green up the space as much as we could. There's also an existing queen palm you can see sitting there just below the blue car. And as Dawn mentioned, we leave ourselves enough room for seating for the fireplace and some chaise lounges for the end of the pool. And I think that's it. You can take any questions that you have about the updated landscape plan.
All right, does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Great. Okay.
Sorry, I'm gonna try to do that.
If somebody could mute themselves. All right, so we now will open public comment. If there's anybody in the public who would like to address the board about this project, you can follow the instructions on screen and raise your hand. And that will alert staff that you wish to make a comment. Do we have anybody out there?
Thank you, Chair Moore. There are several members of the public that have joined the webinar. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the raise lower your hand icon. I don't see that anybody has raised their hand. Mary, have we received any written public correspondence for this item?
Thank you, Christina and board members. We did not receive any written correspondence for this item. Back to you, Chair Moore.
All right, let's close public comment and go to questions from the board. Who has questions for the applicant? Anybody? Not a single question. Okay. All right, so shall we go straight to comments then? Guess so. Oh, was that a question, Vice Chair Six?
No, comment.
You're ready for comment? Okay, then let's go to comments. Vice Chair Six, go ahead.
I think the solution to the tower is the radical lowering of the tower is a very successful and good balance between a handsome architecture, solving the problems of the site, and balancing the interests of the neighbors. So I think very much appreciate the patience to get this balanced, and look forward to a preliminary approval. I do think it myself should come back to full board for final, because final of this size of project consent is too much.
Okay. Mr. Olson, go ahead.
I also commend the applicant and the architect for listening to our comments and making these changes, which I think are quite good for the project, for the neighbor. And I think this is ready for PDA.
All right, anyone else? Have any differing thoughts? No? Okay, Mr. Olson, do you want to make that motion?
Sure, I move that we approve the project for project design approval, and that it return to the full board for final. And the project is consistent with design guidelines. It's compatible with the architectural character of the city and of this neighborhood. The size, mass, bulk, height, and scale are appropriate for this location. It's sensitive to adjacent landmarks and historic resources. The public views of the ocean and mountains now are appropriate. And the use of open space and landscaping is also appropriate.
Okay. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Second by Noon. Any discussion? None. Okay, great. Let's take a vote.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and start with Chair Moore.
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member New,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whitland.
And yes.
All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And there is a appeal process. If you so wish to pursue that, you can follow the instructions on screen. Leave that up for a moment. And in the meantime, we can then adjourn our Architectural Board of Review meeting for October 18th. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a good night.
Thank you. Take care.